When I was 10, I realized I was black. What blackness meant. Learned from the experience of trying to force myself into this pristine, white, and coveted space, which spat me out before I could realize how much I've been abused. There might have been incidents when I was called ugly or rejected by some guy whom I basically didn't know but was infatuated with nevertheless. But that's all they were. Incidents, moments. They weren't experiences that defined my childhood, or me. As a kid, I religiously watched TV shows like Saved by the Bell and Lizzie McGuire. And there was always the cheerleader. She wasn't always blonde, but she was always skinny, white, and desirable. I scrutinized how easy it was for them to make their bodies fly through the air, how graceful their movements were. Every gesture seemed like a dance. I hoped that if I were adjacent to them, then some of their desirability could lather me like soap suds to the skin, polishing me until I was just as white as them. In the 1940s, there was a study where they put 4 dolls in front of children. Each doll was a different skin tone. When asked which doll I liked most, the lighter skinned dolls were chosen, while the darker ones were not. This shows the discrimination shown towards Black American children lowers their self-esteem. In her memoir, Morgan Jenkins shares her story of growing up as an African American woman, and This Is My Undoing by Morgan Jenkins. Cheerleading tryouts for middle school were underway, and I knew that this was my chance. All prospective squad members were mandated to attend nightly sessions in our middle school's cafeteria in order to learn a dance routine. Unlike the cheerleaders in sitcoms and cartoons, these white girls weren't stuck up and rude. They were quite helpful, giving me tips on how to smile when I arrived in front of the judges and how to stretch so that I could improve my movement and my jumps. The more I invested myself into becoming those white cheerleaders, the less mental space I devoted to my actual friends. If I could be a white girl, then I could mimic one until anyone who saw me would think that my skin was a costume. I dreamed that cheerleading would provide a middle ground where I could be popular, envied for my youth, fortitude, and beauty. The night of tryouts arrived. The cafeteria was large, and the whiteness was blinding. I was one of only 4 black girls there, in a room of about 30 white girls. The others were Tanya, Ruby, and an Afro-Latina whose name eludes me now. If you blinked, you might have missed us 4 black girls there. The judges were the cheerleading coaches, those who also taught us all the vocabulary, jumps, and dance routines. My smile was congleed on my face. My confidence was so overwhelming, so filling, that I didn't touch any food or drink before it was my turn. My mother and I held hands to pray that God would hold my fear at bay. Although I could not stir up the strength to lift my pudgy body up in the air in a perfect pike or tuck, I made up for it in enthusiasm. And I knew the dance steps. I'd practiced them every night in my room. My mother encouraged me. When she was a child, she was accepted into the cheerleading squad. I felt like I was a legacy, that it was destined to follow in her footsteps by becoming a cheerleader, and in the process, I could become beautiful through witness. I don't know what fueled my mother's desire to become a cheerleader, and I never asked because I was afraid that in turn she would ask the same. Hours passed as we waited for the results. The cafeteria doors opened again. But this time, the judges were coming out instead of coming in. The entire hallway was silent. I could hear my heartbeat thumping in my chest and an incessant ringing in the other. They called names one by one. White, 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 white. I blinked and a tear rolled down my cheek. One became several. My mother spoke to Tanya's mother and they deliberated going to the administration to talk about this. I didn't know what this meant. I couldn't help but think that something was terribly wrong. But not so much with the judges, but with me. Maybe I wasn't beautiful. Maybe I was too fat. That had to be it, because I wasn't a cheerleader. I felt like I was sentenced to eternal ugliness. I got over the results within a few days. I had another kind of drama unraveling in my life. One of my closest neighborhood friends and I were fighting. The internet was just starting to get popular. More of a fights happened over instant messaging than in person. We might have typed curse words at each other, talked about each other's hair and clothes, but there was one comment that brought my fingers to a standstill. Do you know why you didn't make the cheerleading squad, Morgan? It's because they don't invite monkeys like you on the team. Growing up as a black woman is different. It prepares you to remember that you have to be navigated two worlds. In our predominantly white world, you will never be white. I'd assumed that playing by its rules would insulate and distance me from other black girls. Belonging to the world of black women demands strength, the desire to be a cheerleader, while being seen as a monkey. The bullying, the conflict, all of this takes place on the battlegrounds of being born both black and female. I cannot divorce either part of my identity. Something happened to the young black girl that I was. I fell into a chasm between what I wanted to be and how others saw me. I still have not been able to reconcile these selves with much clarity, and fueled by the vestiges of this trauma, this poisonous place of insecurity for that young woman. I write for me now. And I write for you, because a monkey is what I never was, but a black woman is what I had to become. Even in middle school, the black female body was always a target for destruction. There was no amount of practice or smiling that could obscure the inescapable problem of me being a black girl. Did those white girls look at me as a monkey who had to be treated with artificial cordiality so that I would act wild or aggressive? Did I transform into the character of a monkey when I performed in front of those white women, subtly begging for their acceptance without questioning it? Suddenly I understood more about race than I ever had. I was not human. Thank you.